My next guest is Sanda Ojiambo, the CEO and Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. The United Nations Global Compact is the Secretary General's strategic policy and advocacy initiative, calling for the alignment of business operations and strategies with 10 universal principles in the areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. The Compact is the largest voluntary corporate sustainability initiative in the world. Sanda, great honor to have you on today. Thanks for coming to talk to us about the Global Compact. So, you've already got this voluntary compact out there, and we're also kind of struggling and walking through a lot of the different corners of the ESG movement, if you will, and trying to look at the tension between the well-intentioned and making a real difference. And there is sometimes a gap there. So I'd love to share, you're so huge and you've got so many participants. What are the elements of the ESG debate that you would think, particularly from an American perspective, where a lot of this is new to folks? We had Senator Sherrod Brown said people don't even know what ESG is. But from your perspective on the Global Compact, what would help our viewers to understand what you see as the key equities we have to get in place?
Great, thanks, and thank you so much for having me here. Look, you've talked a little bit about the Global Compact. Certainly, we are the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. But I think what's really important is what we call the 10 principles. And those are principles that we found to be foundational, to be important, and essentially to be timeless for solid, responsible business. Because I don't think there's a business that wants to be in business for the short term. I mean, all businesses want to deliver, value to their customers, value to citizens, value to shareholders, and certainly where we want to go is value to a broad range of stakeholders. So we believe that the 10 principles that we have that really look at issues such as human rights, labor rights, the environment and climate, and issues such as anti-corruption and governance are really critical for all businesses to take into consideration. And I think, just listening to your earlier speakers, a lot of them have touched on it. We've talked about the climate crisis. We've talked about the importance of social justice. We've talked about the importance of good and resilient business. And I think, if anything, this year in the pandemic has totally demonstrated that all of these principles are really relevant for business. So I would reflect on our 10 principles, as I said, human rights, labor rights, the environment, and anti-corruption. There's a little bit of unpacking under each one of them. But for me, those would be foundational to the work that we do. And I think what's really important for business.
Well, I mean, I really like these 10 principles. Do you have them memorized, or you want me to read them real quick?
We could flip the script here, right? And I could quiz you. Yeah,
well, let me just tell you, because I think people, it said you respect and protection of human rights, make sure they're not complicit in human rights abuses, uphold freedom of association and right to collective bargaining, eliminate all forms of forced and compulsory labor, effective abolition of child labor, respect of employment or non-discrimination with respect to employment and occupation. Businesses should support a precautionary approach to environmental challenges, undertake initiatives to promote greater environmental responsibility, encourage the development and diffusion of environmentally friendly technologies, and businesses should work against corruption in all its form, including extortion and bribery. Next time we see each other, I will memorize them somehow and have them.
There we go.
They all seem to me to be sensible. How hard a lift is it to get commitment broadly around the world so that you're making real impact on these challenges?
Look, it's a big lift, but one of the really encouraging things that we've seen over time, and certainly even with many of the U.S. businesses that are part of our membership, is that there's no lack of awareness. In fact, if anything, we see in our annual surveys that CEOs are fully aware of the imperative of these principles, as well as contribution to what we have within the UN, the Sustainable Development Goals. I think what leaders ask for is the how. They have the mindset, they have the skill set, they just want essentially the toolkit. How do you move a business along the lines where you can demonstrably show and demonstrate progress in addressing, the issues that we've talked about? How do you move beyond ambition and commitment to action? How do you turn policies into action at scale? And, I do have to say we do have a progressive group of U.S. companies in our membership, and certainly in our global membership, there's a very broad range of members. I think what we're looking for in the Global Compact is really shifting all of this ambition at scale and seeing global transformation for the business sector as a whole. So the issue is it's not difficult. There's awareness. I think what we're looking for is switching that awareness into action and measuring and tracking it to deliver on transformation.
Sanda, let me ask you a tough question. If you're having a show and tell, UN global, your UN climate policy compact, excuse me for just messing that up, but the UN global compact, when you have a show and tell and you say, okay, here is X company, or here is X country, or here is X city that really gets it right so that we can all learn from it and learn replicable examples. Are there any that come to mind? I'm not asking you the worst, but asking you the best.
There are lots that come to mind. Look, I think that, companies have been very progressive. I can talk about, let me pick on the climate piece because, for a while it wasn't top of agenda. It's suddenly top of agenda. Now we're making tremendous progress towards the COP26. There are companies that have taken very bold leadership positions around stating that they're going to be net zero by 2050, taking bold leadership positions on trajectories around limiting, their emissions, growth in emissions over time. Those, if I look at the US most recently, and we've seen this in this past year, the companies that have taken bold stands around racial and social justice. I think, what we always need to acknowledge is that, there's commitment, there's transformation of systems that are required, and there's certainly being able to see the results over time. I don't think there's a shortage of companies that are doing good or doing better. As I say, our ambition is to really lift this to a level where in industries, across sectors, and certainly in countries, you can see a massive contribution of the private sector to, what we call a better business environment, better world for people and planet, and certainly, with a link to the UN, contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. So our show and tell would be one where we're looking for continuous improvement in what companies can do.
Sanda, one of the, just finally, and thank you for joining us. I really would love to continue this another time as well. But one of the challenges I've heard from folks in the private sector community is how to tighten up the metrics of ESG, the meaning of ESG, so that, there's certain companies that are really investing in this. There are others that may not be doing as much. So, creating, some, and then also looking at how value is created in this area, because once you do that, you've got much more of a sustainable model. I know that you deal with so much that it's hard to get, but do you have insights into the specificity that the private sector is wanting? I mean, I hear them basically saying, we want to have greater clarity on some of these measures, but it's not clear to me who is going to provide that clarity.
Right. So there's a couple of places that, one can go for what are the indices. So first of all, I think all responsible companies report into some form of reporting framework. Here at the UN Global Compact, we have what we call our communication on progress. And we put that out there. We're currently in the process of reviewing it just to make it a lot more robust and dynamic, where you can actually track and measure your progress over time. I know that, for example, certain type of investor would like to see progress in another element. There is probably no one, fully comprehensive platform where I'd say a company could measure everything that they need to. I'll go back to the question of materiality. Measure and track what's important to you, what's important to your business, to your stakeholders, and to your shareholders. And I think that's really where one needs to start. First of all, transparently address what your issues are, figure out what's material to you, and then be able to measure and track and benchmark against it. I think there's very many ways that one can do that. As I say, within our organization, we use our communication on progress for this.
One last one, Sanda. Ambassador Samantha Power has just become head of USAID in America. It's a lot of the same turf that you're on. What would you like to see her have high on her priority list as far as the American contributions to that arena of the Global Compact? What would you ask Samantha Power to have on her to-do list?
Well, first I ask you to put me in direct contact with her. I'm just kidding. But you know what? I think this is a great opportunity to fulfill what we call the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a place where business sits at the table with the development world, with the civil society, with philanthropy, with the UN and the government to solve problems together. I think, we've seen a plethora of issues emerge over this year that have been sort of unpacked by COVID. And the firm belief is no one actor can do this together. So the private sector does need to work hand in hand with philanthropy, with development funding, with government and the UN to solve all these problems. I think further to that, I'd say, in what ways can we leverage financing? Because we're dealing with huge global issues. So, how do we fund development challenges and social challenges in ways that are sustainable for the long term and really deliver ROI for all those who want to invest in taking on these challenges? So mine would be about partnership, collaboration, leveraging funding and financing, and really looking forward to the role that business can play in all of the problem solving that we need to do for society.
Sanda, are you in New York, or where in the world are you?
I'm in New York. I have
we got to get together. We have to get together.
In the middle of the pandemic. I have a story to tell, but I'm happy to be in New York. Made a move in the pandemic, and I'm really well settled, and I'm good.
All right. Well, we got to get together. I really enjoyed this conversation. Sanda Ojiambo, Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was real fun. Thank you.
Thank you.